We got Francis Ngannou coming out saying he wants to box Tyson Fury or Deontay Wilder. That's right, box. Not fight them in the cage, but box them. Now, he's having some issues with the UFC. He's talking about not re-signing with them. But if he does re-sign with them, he says that there has to be some type of clause in there, some provision which allows him to go into boxing and fight the likes of Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder. And as I've been saying in recent videos regarding the UFC, the money's in boxing. That's why you've got a reigning, undisputed, supposedly, right? That's the term they use in UFC, undisputed champion in Francis Ngannou, wanting to turn his back on the UFC and box instead. Because the money's in boxing, folks. And talking about money, talking about pay-per-view revenue, how many pay-per-view sales did Ngannou's most recent fight actually do? Because I've been having this ongoing debate and it continues in one of my Discord servers. Shout out to Jay. He's the one batting for the UFC, and also Devon, they're batting for the UFC. And that's cool. But nobody has been able to produce any evidence that there are these thousands and thousands of other MMA fighters outside of the big main MMA companies like UFC and Bellator. I've yet to see any evidence that such a thing exists. I think that the ballpark figure of 1,000 professional active MMA fighters in the world is going to be there or thereabouts. I mean, could there be 1,500, 1,400? Maybe, but I don't think it's vastly different to what the Business Insider figure was. And as far as the money that these fighters are generating in the pay-per-view buys and what have you, outside of Conor McGregor, and, you know, Conor McGregor's like Floyd Mayweather in the sense that he's an outlier. This is not your typical UFC fighter. Most UFC fighters don't earn anywhere near as much as Conor McGregor, and they don't do anywhere near as many pay-per-views as he does generally. Okay, so he's an outlier like Mayweather. And Conor McGregor, is he retired? Is he unretired? Again, just like Mayweather, he seems to retire and come out of retirement every other year. So that is what that is. But Conor McGregor aside, there's nobody in the UFC as of right now who's doing any serious numbers. I think Usman did good numbers for the first, was it Masvidal fight in 2020? The second fight did about half as many pay-per-view figures. But other than that, there's literally nobody doing anything special on pay-per-view for the UFC. It's just McGregor. It's all the McGregor show, which is why they keep enticing him out of retirement, it would seem. Because they don't have anybody to replace him with right now in terms of doing that well commercially. Ngannou's certainly not doing that well commercially. Again, this is why, as with so many UFC fighters, he's complaining about being underpaid and he wants to come over to boxing. So it is what it is. I wish Francis Ngannou the best. I think he's, obviously a great MMA fighter. He's a big puncher. He thinks he can do something in boxing, or he's going to try and do something in boxing and hope to get paid an awful lot of money. Just like McGregor, when he fought Floyd Mayweather in a boxing match, he earned way more money than he ever earned in the UFC. I'm sure Francis Ngannou, if he was to fight Tyson Fury or Deontay Wilder, certainly if it was Tyson Fury, he'd be earning a lot more than he's ever earned in the UFC. I mean, I think for his last fight, I'm not sure if this is accurate, but somebody said this to me. For his last fight, which was a rematch with, is it Miocic? Is that how you pronounce his name? Ngannou's purse was something like 800 grand, 600 grand. Now I'm assuming that's a baseline purse and he's going to get a pay-per-view cut on top of that, but he's not going to be earning anywhere close to the amount of money that the heavyweight champions in boxing are earning. Okay. And again, the pay-per-view figures for UFC 260, which that fight was, the headline fight of, I can't find the pay-per-view numbers for UFC 260. There are lots of other pay-per-view figures out there, but for UFC 260, I haven't been able to find it. Now, you can see here, this is UFC 260. For the first fight that Ngannou had against this particular individual, Miocic, I always struggle with Eastern European names. The first fight he had against Miocic, I think it did 400,000 pay-per-view buys. And that was back in, I believe, 2018. So again, nothing spectacular. And that is supposed to be the undisputed World Heavyweight Championship. Yeah. Miocic, that's supposed to be the best two heavyweight UFC fighters in the world, or MMA fighters in the world, according to some. And they're doing 400,000 pay-per-view buys. How much did the rematch do? Anybody know? You let me know in the comments below if you do. So yeah, there you go. Francis Ngannou, desperate to come over to boxing to get a serious payday. And I wish him the best. In terms of how much of a chance I would give him against a Deontay Wilder or a Tyson Fury, well, he's certainly got a puncher's chance, as any guy as big and powerful as he does will have. But technically speaking, I mean, he's not even close to any of the top 10 in boxing. So he's going to have a really good chin if he's taking on the likes of a Deontay Wilder and hoping to win. Because although Wilder is ungainly and gangly and awkward, he's used to fighting people who are much technically better than Francis Ngannou. Tyson Fury is way better technically than Ngannou. And many of the other fighters, Luis Ortiz is better technically than Francis Ngannou, so on and so forth. So you can't imagine Deontay Wilder is going to find it extremely difficult to hit Ngannou in there. And it's going to be a different experience for Francis Ngannou dealing with, you know, the bigger gloves and all that kind of stuff, and not being able to kick and hold and do all this other kind of business. And I know he's a real striker, you know. He's not somebody who, to my knowledge, is primarily a ground guy. He's more of a stand-up fighter and a striker. But nevertheless, it's different in a boxing ring, in the squared circle rather than the octagon. Bigger gloves on, only focusing on punches. And the quality of the punches in boxing is far higher than the quality of punches in MMA. And this is not because MMA is not a good sport. It's a great sport. Love MMA. But it's because boxing is highly specialized with regards to punching, whereas MMA is more all-round. You see it? So he's going to be in for a tough time dealing with the highly specialized punching that you find in boxing, particularly at the elite level, which is what he's talking about entering, the elite level in boxing. So anyway, best of luck to him. Hopefully he earns some serious money if he does come over to boxing. And we might see many other fighters, many other UFC fighters who don't have the pull of a Conor McGregor, which is pretty much everybody other than Conor McGregor right now. Many more of them might be coming over to boxing. So let me know what you guys think in the comments below.